Welcome back to another episode of Earn Your Couch. Episode 8, actually. Believe it or not, 8 episodes. That's awesome. We have another guest for you, and this guest name is Ryan Meffert. I know him on a personal level. Jake knows him on a personal level, and I'm going to let Jake introduce him for you.
All right. I'm super fired up to have, my best friend and college roommate and post-college sounding board and support system and my rock through a lot of different major life decisions. And it's kind of been there every step of the way. So it's super special to have Ryan Meffert joining us. Ryan is an entrepreneur from the get-go, has never really worked a full corporate job straight out of school, not even to mention, little businesses he created in high school and everything that he working on startups in college. But really, Ryan is an entrepreneur at heart, originally from Deutschland, a German speaker, a world traveler, someone who absolutely loves to connect with individuals on a deep level. And so I'm super excited for this conversation for you guys to hear us talk about presence and gratitude and how those frames of mind have shaped his ability to lead not only in business, but also to be able to show up as the best version of himself in his day-to-day interactions. And I am excited for you guys to hear what we dive into.
And I happen to know Ryan because he was an old boss of mine. Him and I worked together for about a year. We were building a business together. He's become a best friend of mine. He's become a mentor. And he's become somebody that you can actually lean on and really learn a ton from every single conversation you have. So today we're going to discuss a lot of really good things about just being present, being aware of your feelings and emotions and how to actually cope and manage them, which is something I struggle with personally. And I know a lot of other people in my life do too. So this is a conversation that's going to be really impactful for me moving forward.
Let's dive in.
Success is action towards improving this side project, if you want to call it a side project.
Yeah.
And it's taking action on a regular basis, on a consistent basis, which reminded me of a quote. I forget where it's from. I just have all these quotes in my head now. But
You love quotes.
He loves them.
I'm a big quote guy. But it's the only failure is inaction. All other failures is just feedback. And so it's just learning.
Wait. Let's the last part.
The only failure is inaction. All other failures are feedback. And so it's not the only way that you're going to fail is if you just don't do anything. The other failures along the way is just I need to do this differently. Oh, this doesn't actually work. I don't like the way that we presented this topic in a podcast. Oh, we need to move our microphones back. Oh, this sales funnel actually isn't working because the emails aren't, going through. Like all of those failures along the way are learning opportunities. And so those failures are not failures, but the only failure is not taking any action, because then there's the missed opportunity for feedback.
For sure.
But when you're tying success or your self-worth or your value on 10 closes or 10 sales or 3 booked meetings a day or whatever it is, things that are out of your control, if that's your definition of success, then you're subject to all these other variables. But I remember with Intersect, we made the switch from 5 booked meetings a week to 100 outreach.
Yep.
Because that's in your
control.
And it's you're defining your success on taking action.
For sure. Which is it's a hard lesson to figure out because our innate
what
we
grade
don't
did
want
you
to
get?
we don't yeah and we don't want to look and then like with all the clients that I work with, my metric ultimately is still how much revenue are we generating for them. And so obviously, as we're saying all of this, there's also like you need to measure what matters in order for you to understand, are we on the right path? So there's that whole side when we get strategic and we think about, what inputs are ultimately going to result in the outputs that we believe, and that's the hypothesis. If we do 100 outreach messages, then we will get 5 calls booked. Out of those 5 calls, we'll close 2 of them. That's the hypothesis that you're testing, but then the action is the 100, the 100,
Right.
100, 100. And that's just the action. And through that 100, you actually realize, holy fuck, the metrics that and what we're measuring was totally false because we didn't know about all of these little things and the type of the journey that a customer needs to go on. We actually need to do 200 in order to get to blah 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 blah. And that's like a only way to figure that out is by sort of being forced to figure out, oh wait, what problem, how do we solve this problem?
Well, it's interesting too. I feel like that mindset has been instilled in all of us because of exposure to entrepreneurship and startup world. But like even every little opportunity I've noticed, like we'll mention it. Like I remember when you were looking at the real estate opportunity, part of you was like, I'm going to do this because I think, one, it's a good deal. But like you also weren't like, I'm not going to tie success to like a certain financial outcome. Of course, you're not going to take the deal if it is a dumb deal. But I remember part of you was like, the worst thing that can happen is that this, like I lose some money on it, but I learn a shit ton. Like, and so like, that's the approach. And same thing with EYC. It's been, the worst thing that happens is we have conversations for a year that was forced, and we learn a little bit more about how to articulate ourselves, how to communicate, the world of social media marketing, the world of building a brand, how to talk on a podcast and feel comfortable, how to reach out to a guest, how to set up little SOPs. Like,
Dang, that's a business. That's life.
That's all it is.
And then what does all that do? That turns into confidence.
Right,
That translates to confidence that then you see an opportunity and you're able to have enough confidence to take massive action, which 99% of the population can't do because they don't have the confidence in themselves.
Fear.
Well, like adding to that, in terms of taking action, to the EYC mindset, like had this fear after I broke my leg a few years ago of getting back into working out really hard and really getting back into that routine of doing it every day because I enjoy it. Because I had this fear of hurting my leg again, and it's just a mental block that happens because of pain that I experienced.
Trauma.
But something I've noticed since we've instilled this EYC mindset and just feeling like we need to earn the right to relax and enjoy ourselves, right, is taking action has built this confidence in me to where I can't wait to get back into the gym and work out and try this new exercise because I know for me experience-wise and for Jill, we've had this lack of confidence to try new exercises because we have that fear of not being able to do it right or not being able to follow through with it. And now I've gotten back this just idea of let's try something new like every single week and still a new type of workout into our routines and systems. And it's been fun and it's been new and it's gotten this like excitement to like, let's go to the gym and do this workout, which has also compounded into like our every single day, like feeling of confidence in each other. We feel like we are more physically attractive, like as people, just through putting in action every day. And so like, it's in business, it's in your personal fitness, like life, it's in the food you eat, take action by eating healthier. It's in the like actual discipline and motivation you have every day. Oh, I'm going to choose to not drink for a week because I can have that discipline. You do that. You build confidence by doing that. And that action of doing so also compounds into probably working out every day, getting better sleep, and drinking more water.
Sure. And having seen Andrea go to the gym and reshaping that relationship with it too is you can feel the confidence shift and you can feel the appreciation for health and taking care of your body and that ripples into all aspects of your life. And that makes you more energized to then reach out to that friend and whatever, and then even think for yourself. Take care of yourself allows for you to be the best version of yourself in order to show up for the others. And that was one of the hardest lessons to figure out, is dang, we should probably work on ourselves more than anything in this life, because that allows us to show up for others, and that builds connection, and that builds so much meaning.
And you've been really good about that. Do you feel like during the improvement, like the self-improvement journey that you've been on, has also kind of compounded in your actual entrepreneur, like your business that you're building?
Yeah. With anything, I think we all have felt the habits that really add energy rather than drain it. And how do we know that? Is because we've experienced it, of working out, drinking water, getting enough sleep, mindfulness. My meditations have been a cornerstone over the last half a year, especially being able to offset a lot of the suffering that happens from thinking too much. And that is something that I think the world right now, and a lot of people, we identify with our thoughts, and that whole relationship through even working out is like, you produce better thoughts about yourself, about how you look, about how you feel. And then I think biologically, it also just increases whatever goes on in your body. I don't know the technicals. You have more sustained energy that then allows you to almost like roll with the punches too, because anything that we do is uncomfortable, at least with how we're pushing ourselves just in general. And anything we do, like most recently, I faced a problem with the business, and that, if you would have talked to me like a year ago or 2 years ago, that problem would have been a little mental breakdown. But now it's, I'm able to see that problem for what it is, and be able to remove myself from the thought loop of like, oh shit, then this is going to happen, or this is a fear. And you entertain all those fears by thinking too much. But now I'm able to actually, like, through a lot of the habits, take a step back and see the situation from an objective standpoint, and not be tied in this emotional kind of like turmoil. And a lot of those habits allow for me to actually deal with all that stuff.
What are when you say habits, we all have different
Yeah.
habits, but what, like, actually,
Yeah.
what are your habits you're doing? Because I know yours are probably different than mine and most people.
Or to refine the question, you try a lot of things on. Some things have stuck, some things have not stuck. What has been like your consistent 3 things? Hey, if I were to, like, you got to find out for yourself what works for you. But if you're the same
Yeah.
person as me, these are the 3 things that have helped me the most.
Yeah. Let me even refine that question even more. Is it more about business, or is it more about self, like appreciating the everyday? What?
I'd like to ask about the intersection between showing up as the best version of you at work, but also showing up as the best version of you for the people outside of work.
Yeah. How does that? Yeah. All right. Well, let's just break down. I think in terms of habits, let's break them down into categories of life. I think let's just start with health. Health is wealth. That whole exercise, everything that we just talked about with confidence that comes from exercise and what's actually going on internally, it makes you want to eat better. And then when you eat better, your microbiome is just like happy, and you have more energy from there. And so I think the peak of that habit would have to be exercise. That rolls into a lot of other things. So exercise itself, and then not putting too much pressure again on the outcome, but rather focusing on like what gives you energy, in terms of like what exercises do you like to do. And I wrote that out for this year. I coming from, I need to be at the gym and do these different exercises every single week. to, all right, maybe this cardio training, I can get it from doing volleyball instead, and thinking about it more through that lens. So habit of exercise with your own, in your own style. I think we get too roped into doing it what we see online and all the in the gym and stuff like that. So exercise ripples into all other aspects. Then I would say mindfulness practices have evolved over the years. And for me, mindfulness has given me the perspective on my day-to-day experience of life, and allows me to sort of like instantly reflect, instantly synthesize what the heck is going on. And mindfulness takes you usually away from technology and away from the external world, and brings you more in tune with the internal world. And over now having stressful situations and quote unquote failure moments with building a business, all of the suffering came from internally. Like at the end of the day, we constantly, we quote unquote fail at something, and we have really shitty thoughts about ourselves or the situation or what this means for how people, what people think about me. All these like really negative thoughts just start to ruminate in your head, and that creates what the cause and effect. The effect is then feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling these emotions, which then result in you really like going down a bad spiral. And now mindfulness, because that's inevitable if you don't, in my opinion, practice mindfulness, that allows you to actually like disassociate with that, still acknowledge. So I always create this gap, because for me, what I do during mindfulness practices or like meditation is, as soon as you close your eyes, thoughts just flood your brain. As I think that's for everyone. So now thoughts are flooding your brain, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I need to do this, or I forgot to do this, and oh, like the clients, blah, 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 blah. So all of that comes up, but then when I am in that state, I'm able to actually start to create a gap of becoming the observer of the thoughts ultimately, and try and like honestly like become a different entity looking at my thoughts. And then just like, you know, Jacob, if you were to listen to me talk about some of the things that I'm going through in life, you're most likely going to be able to know exactly, oh yeah, well, you should probably tweak this thing, which will then have this effect. And you're able to solve the problems by being a third party, by not having the emotions tied to all of these, the anxiousness and whatever. You have clear judgment and are able to really help me. And so through like learning about mindfulness, I started to realize, wait, I can do that for myself. And so like, when was the last time you've actually like entertained these thought patterns and become the observer of those thought patterns, and then be like a psychologist trying to understand, oh wow, like that thought came from this traumatic experience way back in childhood, and just that mindfulness time or exercises allow for me to actually be my own psychologist or psychiatrist.
So you're essentially trying to separate your thoughts from your physical, like emotion, like the way you're physically feeling.
Yeah, because the thoughts ultimately create the emotions. And so if the thoughts themselves, and it's the identification with the thoughts. And so if we have, if something happens and my thought is, I could have done better, or I'm really hard on myself, then I feel sort of sad, or I feel like I'm a worse person because of it, or whatever. And then that creates those emotions, and that makes you not want to do anything. And you go into you kind of roll up into a ball and not want to do anything. But then if you have those thoughts come up and then you hop into a practice, and then you start to see those thoughts from a third person, then you can actually be like, oh my gosh, like, what is that thought? Why am I having that thought? Not, I am the thought and I am a shitty person, but rather, why do these thoughts produce this feeling of feeling shitty about yourself? And then you start to actually synthesize the real root of the thoughts, and then you start to actually be able to like have weight lifted off your shoulders because you've thought about it that way.
I've noticed that in that practice of trying to create distance between you as an entity and your thoughts as a separate entity, immediately reduces stress. Like it's almost like you regain power or control in a way, when you're just trying to be like, well, trying to understand your thoughts as opposed to just listening to your thoughts, just what you're saying. But I also think it can be really challenging. And, I know you, and you have you're very consistent with your meditation practice, but do you feel like you are able to do that through your mindfulness meditation or mindfulness like type journaling? Or do you find that you're able to kind of do that a little bit more on the fly now that you've practiced it more? Or do you still need to like carve that time out to like give yourself the space to do so?
Yeah. There's nothing you can ever do to not go down those paths on a consistent basis. It's like our biology is there to protect us, and to protect us, we look at the world negatively, or we seek what's going to harm us, and that's why our thoughts are like, no, don't do that, or I'm afraid of this, so you're not going to actually go to the gym. If you're scared of the gym, you're not going to go because your thoughts are going to make you not want to go. But the way that I now am able to think about it is just like you going to the gym or you running, like those first few workouts, take it easy. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, it's a journey to getting there. And so for me, it would be weeks and weeks and weeks of intense emotion, because that's life, and that it's really difficult. And so the strengthening of that relationship and creating the gap and not identifying with the thoughts has led me to certain like visualizations that help me. It's like I came up with the analogy of, imagine like your mind is like the sky and your thoughts are like the weather, right? So sometimes the sky is clear and beautiful like it is right now, which is epic that we're in winter and we have 75 degrees outside. And then, but other times, like this, the storm has heavy clouds and you're just filled with anxiety or stress and uncertainty. And most people identify with the storm, believing that when it's cloudy, that's their existence. Their existence is clouded, right? But then through presence and the realization that you are not actually the storm itself, you're the sky, you can start to then be able to be like, oh wow, yeah, that storm will pass, as all things do. But the sky, which is our essence, is what remains like vast and open to all opportunities, and it really doesn't affect the sky. It's just a cloud that's gone through. And so when you step into presence and the mindfulness and stuff like that, you just don't get lost in the weather as much. Like that, everything I just explained, that is the muscle that I'm constantly working on realizing that my mind is the sky, not the storm or not the thoughts. And that just helps me actually think more clearly, and I think show up for others, because with business, with employees and all that, like, you're holding a lot of space for people as well that are going through life. And it allows for me to actually help them associate, like, okay, what is that thought? Or like, do you realize that you've had this happen before, but nothing, like, this anxiety that you're feeling is all made up in your head. So like, what is that actually? And like, how do we dissect that? And what's the reality of it? Let's create that objective kind of frame to it. And it's just really trippy. Once you start to do that, and you can start to do that with others, but with yourself, you're just like, there's weight lifted off your shoulders, and then you can think more clearly.
When you're, oh, sorry, Jake.
To
about
take your well, I guess I'm curious because I could almost see a situation where, because you are the sky, you're taking the analogy of the sky, when you understand that the storm is not you, and so you can I guess, weather the storm a little bit easier because you recognize that this thing is going to pass. But I also think on the flip side of that, maybe like when there is no storm and it's all sunshine and rainbows, that maybe you don't appreciate, the sunshine as much because you're like, this too shall pass. And so do you feel like you're more even keeled? And then with this analogy, how does like a gratitude practice play into it? Like, where does that fit in? Because I almost feel like when I'm hearing it, the gratitude is almost like a little bit of your umbrella in the storm. But it's also your, when it's sunshine, it like amplifies the sunshine, because you're like, I'm not feeling the anxiety that I was feeling the past couple of weeks because of X, Y, and Z reason going on. Like, this is, I'm really light right now and I'm doing whatever. Gratitude is an amplifier, and it's also a protector. And I know, for those who don't know,
So
Ryan,
epic.
like,
So
Ryan
awesome.
has introduced gratitude to my life in a lot of ways, as someone burning the trail ahead, a trailblazer for practicing gratitude, practicing presence. And for me, feeling like it was a little silly when you first started it, and then the confidence from the reps and the removal of fear and the removal of anxiety of like almost like faking it till you make it, like, oh, I know I should be practicing gratitude, so I'm going to, has transitioned into, I practice gratitude because I know it makes me feel better. I know other people appreciate being appreciated. I know that other people appreciate that frame of mind. And so it's gone from like a fake it till you make it to like, no, I try to live through this frame of mind as much as I can. So I guess, how does gratitude fit into it? How is gratitude, how does that complement your practice of presence and mindfulness?
Okay. Yes, and yes. Let's actually think about why does gratitude create that umbrella like feeling, or magnifying the good, and even when a good day is there. Well, why does that work? It's like, what is the actual reality that's happening when we practice gratitude? Is, in a way, it's like, all right, what are you're shifting your thoughts, and you're not thinking about the negatives. As I think, like, relating it to real life, our thoughts are probably like the fears are, what if this doesn't work, or what if I lose everything, or what if I'm making whatever I'm doing, like, what if it's the wrong move? And so you can almost think like that mental storm is just brewing. And then I think, to your point, like, gratitude makes it so that, one, the storm doesn't even brew as heavily, because you're replacing those storm brewing thoughts with the good. And when it is a mental chatter and you're just like, you're freaking out, gratitude brings you, it creates that umbrella like feeling. And so even when you're in the thick of it, you can achieve a level of protection for yourself. And it's not fake protection. It's not like you're not faking, you're not trying to trick yourself into doing it, because you actually, with gratitude, you lean into, your brain kind of goes into like a curious frame. You're like, oh yeah, what am I grateful for? And then you can bring it back to like, think about one of the last really shitty moments that have happened to your life. Even a loss of a loved one, and this is really difficult to kind of connect to, but even a loss of a loved one, you can find gratitude in that, in all the lessons that this loved one shared with me, the legacy that they left behind, and how that can create a ripple effect in my own life to show up for others, to then believe in myself. Like, sure, you can think really negatively, or you can kind of frame your mind through the lens of gratitude. And I think that it just allows you to calm the thoughts a little bit more. And then you notice that kind of the fear that would have stemmed from, oh shit, what if this doesn't work? Your mind doesn't even go all the way to all those, like, the storm doesn't brew. You can kind of like be in the moment and realize it's actually fine. It's actually good that this is happening, type of thing, because it leads to this, and this.
There's
It's
a
something
level 4 weather system off the coast of Florida.
Yeah.
It's something I really have been trying to work on, is dealing with stress by using gratitude. I also think there's something being said for putting positive energy into your life that also amplifies positive energy into people around you. And gratitude is that first thing that you do to have a good mindset at the beginning of the day. At least for me, when I write it down in my journal, I don't think about the last year, but I think about the last week of what I've been grateful for recently, because that recency helps continue that acceleration of good positive feeling and energy that I think also amplifies into people around in your life. When you amplify that positivity and other people around you are more positive, you have less anxious, stressful feelings. I wanted to go back a little bit and talk more about how you're writing down your thoughts, this storm in your head, all this, you're writing down your thoughts, and what led you to this realization that you're separating your thoughts from your feelings, essentially? Were you going through therapy? Was it books?
Yeah.
How did you get to that point? Because not a lot of people think like that. And even I struggle with writing down my thoughts and understanding what I really am feeling.
Yeah. Definitely there's 3 books that do it, that will show you how to think a little differently, or what's actually going on behind the scenes of our mind. And then I would say that led to being able to understand the tools in your toolbox to be able to leverage. And then it's the consistent action of the daily practice that gets you there. And so I would say the 3 books are The Almanac by Naval Ravikant, really, really solid. Yeah. And there's a page on the back that has all of the success, the equations for living a fulfilled life. And some of those are just so killer that you can put that wherever you work at on a daily basis as that reminder, because we're going against kind of the norm of how our minds usually think. We're letting the ego kind of lead the way, and all of those thoughts stem from kind of the ego and how it's trying to protect ourselves. And so you start what that book started to do is actually bring to light what is actually going on behind the scenes. So The Almanac by Naval Ravikant, and then The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
I love how Jake's just bringing these books into frame right now, by the way.
Yeah. It's great.
That's awesome.
It's because he knows. And then the last one is actually don't believe everything you think. I don't think you have that one, Jake.
Ah.
Yeah.
There's always more
And
to read. There's always more to read.
There is. But it was really interesting how, to answer your question, Coleman, the gratitude side cannot actually go back to the original kind of thing that why that, because I started that 5-6 years ago. I would start all the first meetings with the team that I led and would just be like, okay, what's one thing you're grateful for? And the feedback that I got from that was like that was their favorite part of the meeting. And then with my team now, I have them all over the place. We still start with one thing you're grateful for. And that's actually just allowed us to understand each other a little bit more of like what's actually below the surface of like that work relationship where you don't really get into the details of each other's lives. And gratitude, it just unleashes a sense of connection because you align so much with, oh wow, like it's honestly like kind of inspiring to hear someone's reason for gratitude, even if it's as simple as like family. You know, if somebody says, or if I ask like, oh, like what are you grateful for? Oh, my family. I'm like, oh, like what about your family? And then just that then leads into all of these things that flush the whole brain with the feel good chemicals of what is actually the reality of your relationships that wasn't there without gratitude. You wouldn't have thought about your family if it wasn't for where did that stem from, because then the good kind of outweighs the bad. But going back to your question, so when I read the Almanac and the Power of Now, it was actually after the first chapter of the Power of Now. That's when I relit the flame of mindfulness practice. And you can see in my app that I use, it allows me to just set a timer, and it's a transcendental meditation app from before I read The Power of Now to after. And that was in October of last year. I think November, actually. It went from 2 to 3 times a month to now I'm doing it like 35, 40 times a month. And it was just that shift. It was a shift, but just because out of like exposure, simply of the philosophy or just like the know-how of how our brains function, it allowed me then to know what muscle am I even trying to strengthen. And then that puts you on a path to a lot of self-discovery. And then from there, it's kind of those reminders. Because once you know it and once you've lived it and you've really integrated with whatever the knowledge is, like this whole disassociation of it, I've now meditated, let's say 150 times since then. No, it would be whatever the number is. I've only been able to capture a few times when I was truly disassociated with my thoughts and felt that bliss and felt like I was thoughtless and I was so present and it was like an enlightenment. You're just so fulfilled by doing nothing. And that is what got me to be like, oh my God, there's so much more to this. And we're going against the grain. And then I gave it to my dad, who's very traditional and old school. And we've had just profound conversations since then because he was so stuck in his ways and identify with the thoughts. Because when anything happens, you go straight into thinking a lot and thinking and thinking and thinking. And those thinking is all that creates the stress. But if you didn't have thoughts, and that's what I think, like when we talk to peak performers who are in flow state, when you ask anyone in flow state, what are you thinking about?
Thoughtless.
And you're oh, right. It's the thoughts.
It's such a skill. Like it's a skill that I think takes a lot of time to master and learn. Like, is it something you feel like you're pretty
No.
dang good at? You're just consistently, yeah,
And that is
fine it.
after months and months of working on it. And I still would say I am an infant to understanding it, but comparatively to, I would relate it to the people I surround myself with and my family and stuff like that. I'm actually able to hold more space for others because I'm not, when they're talking, I don't now, I can learn how to quiet my mind and do active listening and then actually like explore what they're experiencing rather than just trying to say all the right things or the next thing. It's holding space for them to actually process their own experiences more clearly just by me, again, working on that relationship with thoughts.
Well, it's you mentioned that you're like, I got exposed to it from this book, and I think that's a big thing. It's just like it takes exposure, and then and probably on the first time you're exposed to it, you're probably not gonna like fully buy in, but like you need to like try it out, you need to test it out, you need to get experience, you need to practice it, you need to read another book that frames it in a different way, you need to talk to some people who are practicing, and they're like, and so like once you read a chapter, it's not like, oh, now I know how to be present. Like it
Yeah.
is a full practice, and it's a rewiring, and it's a reframing on like your approach. And I think that's one of like the blessings of reading and learning. And I think Naval talks about it being like the number one skill that you can have is to like continue to learn and to continue to like retool and to reshape like your thoughts and to have, mental models in your brain that continue to elevate your perspective. And that's why I think as we keep getting older, we're like, I can't believe we never freaking understood this. Like, but it just takes time. And then like 5 years from now, we're going to have the same moments of being like, oh, when I was, in my mid-20s, I didn't know shit. And then my 40-year-old version is going to be like, oh, my 31-year-old version didn't know shit. Like, but like, that's just because you keep leveling up. And I feel like, to your point, Coleman, like it's a skill, but it takes awareness first. And I think practicing on a daily basis, like before you start working, you write down 3 things you're grateful for, or when you start a meeting, you're like, we have an hour, we have a lot of stuff we need to cover. But before we like dive into that, let's just take a few minutes and, what's going on in your world that you're excited about. And then you start to like point out in your head, you're like, oh, I'm actually really grateful for that because you've thought about it before. And then it starts to flow, and you have moments where you're present. And then when you're unpresent, you're like, oh, this is way more stressful. And I'm going to try and retool, reframe, reprioritize the way that I look at things. And there's another quote from John Wooden, greatest coach of all time, arguably, who says, imagine how much better life would be if we magnify the positives the same way that we magnify the negatives. And so I think most people don't have a tool set to, how do I observe my thoughts? Or with nonviolent communication, how do I express my needs in a way that doesn't put someone in a defensive or a judgmental way? Or what are tools that I can employ so that I have a better chance of success at being present? And all those things take time and learning and practicing. And Ryan, you might never feel like you've mastered it. You probably won't, but you're going to feel that, once again, to not put success on a result of perfection and like not getting mad at yourself when you're not completely present at all times, but defining your success as I'm present way more minutes out of my day than I was a year ago. I'm grateful. I practice gratitude way more frequently than I used to. I connect with people in a way that's way better than I used to. Not every single interaction is a awesome connection that like changes your world or whatever, but more interactions are fulfilling and more interactions are present and more time you're focusing on what you do have and not on what you don't have. And I think that's the journey that we're all on and we're all figuring out. And so,
Yeah, dude, and the figuring out all of those things that you just brought up, and like the thoughts and everything, that everyone's on their own journey with that. And so like, how can we start to bring awareness to it all is just by talking about it more. And like, even in the last half a year, we've been talking about it more, and we've been able to unlock certain things. And I think that's what's beautiful about what you're doing with the podcast is these kinds of approaches to life. From what you know, it's just like sharing things, and anything that we talk about, it's you just try it on for yourself and see if that works, and then if it doesn't, then move on to something. There's so much, everyone's so different and so unique. It's like, okay, then try on, give yourself the gift of trying, actually. So the success metric is trying, not just thinking about it, is actually doing it. And then I was actually starting to like try and come up with, how do you, because one of the greatest gifts is to relieve someone of their thoughts. It really is. And that is through gratitude. You can relieve someone of the negative thoughts in someone's head and start producing a moment in time that is blissful and appreciative and all of those good things that we like. And so you can start to ask yourself, when a few questions, checking in, how good are you actually at living in the moment, being present, and having, doing sort of the right things. And so it's like, have you ever been, when was the last time you were so deep in a task that you lost track of time? What are you doing with your environment to allow you to actually tap into that? I know I had one this week, and that's after I bricked my phone, I put it in another room. I was like an hour and a half into a session late at night without distractions. And that's when I lost a sense of time, and it was flow. And then I was rushed with like passion to keep moving forward. And I was just like, I was journaling, I was building stuff in Figma, and I was like, wow, this is what it's all about. And then a few more questions, and then I'll hand it back over. But like, what percentage of your worries from last week, a month ago, last year, what percentage of those worries actually came true?
That's such a good question. Yeah.
Because we have a gazillion worries and we're constantly anxious. What of those actually came true? And be honest with yourself. And then that's kind of a check in your head. Oh, wait, maybe all of these thoughts that I'm having about not pursuing something, or what somebody said to me, like, maybe that's all from me. Why am I thinking that?
That sparked, I was trying to find it, I couldn't find it, but like fear and confidence it's both, like, it's banking on a result. If you're confident about the future, it means that you're confident that a certain result is going to come. If you're fearful about the future, you're confident about you think a certain result is about to come. One gives you a very negative, anxious feeling. One gives you confidence. And then to what we've been talking about this whole time is, how do we create confidence? Action, reps, doing the damn thing. And so if at any moment there's the potential for a unknown outcome, could be good, could be bad, fear is the one that I think dominates a lot of people, especially those who are anxious or stressed out or don't have these tools.
Scary.
It's very scary. I have fears. You have fears. I get anxious on a daily basis.
Doesn't stop.
Every day.
Yep.
But the reps, the action that you take, can, I think, put more votes into the confidence bucket, a vote of confidence, as opposed to a vote into the fear bucket. And I think that just kind of clicked for me in a way. It's like, they're both. It's a confidence, and fear is a mental state of a result that may or may not happen. Like, why the fuck would we choose fear if we could choose confidence? But it's hard to choose confidence unless you've taken the action and the reps and the whatever. I think that's one of the things that builds and compounds, is you get exposure to the reps. From even I I think the ice bath is the easiest way to like make a metaphor out of it. People who have never done an ice bath think it's gonna be the worst, most horrible, scary thing ever. And they're like, fuck that, I'm not going in. I'm like, 30 seconds, you could do anything. You got this. No, not doing it. But because there's no exposure, there's no mental models of like what this is actually gonna be like. It's overwhelming. And then their actual experience in it is usually negative because they're like, that was horrible. And then they get out and they're like, that actually wasn't that bad. And then the next time, so even if I haven't done an ice bath in, a few days, that first one back is like, your body's like, this is going to be pretty bad, I think. But if you've done an ice bath multiple days in a row, the next one is just like, you just hop in because you have the confidence that everything is going to be okay. You have the action, the reps, the preparation to feel like, hey, the end result of me getting in this thing isn't actually going to be my worst nightmare. And then you're also like more willing to endure the pain of the ice bath.
Right.
And then you get out and you're all, I'm fucking 3 minutes in that bad boy, let's go.
I was gonna say, you get out of there and you're like, let's go do something crazy. Like, I mean, Ryan, remember when
you start doing the haka.
Ryan, you and I, when we were building the website of Joy. Remember, we started the day in the ice bath, and then we literally like right afterwards spent like 10 straight hours just writing copy for the website, and we were like, what a day!
Epic.
It
was epic.
It fueled our adrenaline, right, to keep going. So something that I have noticed over the past couple of months for me personally is those fears that you have, like the negative thoughts that you have. Maybe you had a really hard day and you're just feeling that overwhelming like feeling at the end of the day. A year ago, I would have had that overwhelming feeling and felt like, because I feel overwhelmed, because I have these negative thoughts, I just want to like sit down and zone out and go on my phone and go on social media and not think about anything else. And recently, I've had these like overwhelming days, and I've had this stress, and I've had this toll of like, I've got a lot of thoughts in my head and a lot of ideas in my head that I just can't fully comprehend right now at this time. I want to go take action and do something like physical. So it's like, go for the walk when you're feeling stressed out and have that negativity. And then you come to this realization while you're working out, while you go on a walk, while you are writing in your journal, like you're taking action instead of sitting and relaxing with those thoughts. So is that kind of what it's like? I guess you could say when you're separating your thoughts and your physical feelings, is you can also go and take action by working out and having those positive thoughts come back into your brain, or what you referred to like the storm in your head, like leaving that outside and bringing the sky back. I guess you could say the clear sky by doing something instead of like meditating, for example, because I haven't been fully into meditation, but it's something that I've done in the past, but it's something that I'm not doing every day.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. The meditation or this whole thing that we're talking about, it doesn't need to be in this. We don't need to box it into this one thing. And I think you going on a walk, that simple movement and inputs of, I think, what you're presently experiencing allows for your thoughts to become a little bit more quiet. I'm assuming is like when you're actually going or you're working out, you're not just in your head.
Right.
You're experiencing the present moment, which then also allows the subconscious to do its thing, because then it's and then that answer sort of kind of can come to you after a day or a walk or whatever that is. And then like the question that I would help kind of facilitate in your own head is like, how and checking in with that moment of suffering, how much of your suffering actually comes from the situation itself, or how much actually comes from the thoughts about it.
Right.
And once you can believe that, like I believe that deep down, is that this shitty situation is because I've had this thought that then went into this thought, this thought, this thought, this thought of these hypotheticals. that the brain is just protecting itself from. And so then we need to figure out with ourselves what allows us to actually get out of that. Walking, working out, meditating, yoga. It can be, it's for sure not the phone. I know
Journaling.
that. Journaling.
Yeah, I often journal after I work out because I feel like I have the best frame of mind
Ooh.
right after a workout. Does that make sense?
I love that. That's actually smart because then you have, you're more in tune with kind of everything,
And how you're
like your whole
feeling, and
being. Yeah. Ooh, I like that. The same, maybe even after like a sauna or something like that.
Mhm.
But and don't, like, not being hard on ourselves, just realizing that probably you're feeling right now, whatever it is, it's a result of thoughts. And so how can you check in with yourself? What can you do to activate a little bit of presence and not being so in your head, which is hard because then that's actual action. You need to go do stuff. And
and it feels like weird the first many times you do it. You know, like it feels weird to write down what you're grateful for. It almost feels wrong in a way. And then you eventually, like Jake, you said earlier, you eventually shift your frame of mind into thinking, no, this is what I like. I want to presently ask myself what I'm grateful for right now versus I want to do it because I said I'd do it every day. Same thing with meditation. It's like it feels weird at first because you've never done it,
And it's also like meditation and a gratitude practice and journaling. It's going against the grain of what most people are doing and what's standard and what's seen as, the status quo. And I think we've had the opportunity to get exposed to it really early on in a world that's full of noise and distraction. And those distractions, I think all of us wanted a way to combat and to see light at the end of the tunnel for stresses that we're feeling and have tools that like legitimately make us feel better. And then I think when you're exposed to like, oh, this thing that actually works because I forced myself to practice a little gratitude, or I forced myself to journal, or I forced myself to work out, or I forced like because I think it might help. You start to get that positive reinforcement of like, oh wait, there's some funky voodoo magic going on in this thing, because like I hopped on work super stressed out, and then I wrote down 3 things that I'm grateful for. One of them is just blatantly that there's a dog sitting behind me. A second one is that I have multiple pillows on my bed, and the third one is that the sun is going to be shining in a place. Like 3 very like normal things that it's easy to take for granted, but like the stress that I was just experiencing isn't gone, but I feel much more apt to take on the challenge, where I feel lighter in general.
it helps you manage it.
Yeah, it's all emotional regulation. And the internal experience is going to dwarf your external experience every single time. And, 2 people can be at the beach on a beautiful sunny day, and one person is thinking about some super stressful project that isn't going to get done on time since they're at the beach and they're da 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 da, and they're not enjoying the beach. And other people can be, I'm at the beach, it's a sunny day, I'm with a friend, yada yada yada, and like your experience is dictated by your thoughts most of the time. There are some things that are out of your control, but 99.9% of your life, your experience is how you're thinking about it, and it's your mindset towards things. It's the same reason why growth mindset is so important for long-term success. It's why a frame of gratitude can have such positive impact, even though it can seem really silly. But because you're adjusting your thoughts to a positive one, to an energy amplifier that can have just ripple effects on all of your different little interactions.
A lot of the thoughts themselves, like where do thoughts come from? You start to think like, okay, well, why did I produce that thought? And when was the last time you asked yourself, why did I produce that thought? And that in itself starts to disassociate with the thought itself, and you're trying to understand the thought. So that's just an important, check your thoughts. Just check them. Like, check in and know that you are not your thoughts, and that you are actually the thoughts themselves. It's like you're not the voice. Are you the voice in your head, or are you the one listening to it? And then that starts to be like, actually, all the thoughts that I'm producing, that's the voice in my head. The one listening to it is the growth mindset. Is it can see a thought and then be like, well, I find gratitude in that, or let's say instead of a thought, it's an experience. You failed. You can either see that as a direct inkling of yourself. I am worthless because I failed in this thing, or I learned this thing which helped me become this version of myself. And those are ultimately two different kind of approaches that you can look at life with. And I would way rather choose the latter.
Right. Would you guys also say it's more about kind of just being conscious about your thoughts and being conscious about the gratitude you choose to think about that day? Because, I mean, let's be honest, we're not sitting here 24/7 going, oh, I'm so grateful for XYZ. I'm grateful for XYZ. Or like you're working and you're just like, oh my God, I'm feeling stressed right now. I need to like stop and think about this, right? Like it's more so of just every day be aware and implement when you can.
Yeah.
And it's shortening the time between trigger to being implementing a solution for yourself. Stressful trigger is your initial reaction to go on your phone. Do you go on your phone for 20 minutes? Well, if like at first, when you start to make the change, you might go on your phone for 5 minutes and be like, you know what, this isn't the thing that's actually going to like help me feel better. The thing that's going to help me feel better is going on a walk outside. And so like, if you can like shorten the time from trigger to doing something that turns a negative into a positive or reframes your brain, because there's times when I get pissed off. There's times when I get annoyed. There's times when I'm stressed out of my mind. There's times when I don't want to do anything. But that time between that thing happening and then action, that's a positive vote, is much shorter, and it's more likely than it used to be. I still sometimes go with the wrong habit. I still sometimes break. But like it's less frequent, and that time to action is much shorter. And I think that starts to make significant changes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. 100%.
I have one last question for you, Ryan, and
Yes.
we could obviously talk for another 3 hours about this stuff. But if you had side of a busy freeway, thousands of cars driving by every hour, and you were to like just share a message with the world, what's on your billboard?
Coming up with the exact copy is always going to be hard.
Of course.
It takes time.
But it takes a few
A/B
iterations.
test. Do I have 2 highways to test?
What's the,
Is it lit up at night? Is it mornings and afternoons? Do I get
is
any
it
sort of
digital?
video?
Can we do hours like
What is our audience? Who are we targeting here?
Yeah. Something that, and I'm going to just talk it through, that I've realized on my journey about my why has become, how can I create a ripple effect into from a single conversation to inspiring them to take an action for themselves, like see themselves for who they really are, empowering, like asking maybe the right question to figure out, is this something that will fulfill them, or helping people discover for themselves what their true nature is and like what they're all about. And by creating a ripple, or by having that as like my why of creating a ripple of good ultimately, I actually discovered that when I was at Lightning in a Bottle, and I had a bubble gun that I brought to the music festival. And so there was this big house set and lights everywhere. We were just like at the main stage, and I just took the bubble gun for like a minute straight, just lit up the entire sky with bubbles. And then I looked around and I just saw these beautiful humans just like admiring the bubbles with just like smiles on their faces. They were just like hugging each other, just like creating that moment of just bliss. And that little moment showed me, oh my gosh, the impact that I can have through my actions, which in this case, it doesn't, like, it's just bubbles in the air. But because I decided to bring bubbles to the thing, and I just like bubbles, and so, like, long story short, I was able to create a ripple effect to hundreds of people that were very present in the moment, enjoying music and enjoying each other and the whole vibe. And so that, after that weekend, I have this note that I wrote during a flow state about my why, about where I'm headed into the future for what I'm trying to do. And that is tell stories, share values, create ripples. That was my ethos. And telling the stories is just purely from just trying things and trying to relate with people and show them that, life is just one big story, and it is what you make of it. And through stories, I think we connect, and I think sharing your values allows you to bring in people who share similar values, and even challenge your values to understand them in more detail. And then creating ripples is like that why in every day. And a ripple can be as simple as asking somebody that you're or like nodding to somebody that you're walking by, or just looking them in the face and giving them a compliment. And I try and strive for that. And so whether that would be on the billboard, tell stories, share values, create ripples. I think at the end of the day, that essence of the billboard, just to be like, give yourself the gift of creating that ripple, because you never know what that can do for somebody else. And I would rather, live a fulfilled life with people having been impacted by you, rather than just acquiring more or doing it for yourself. So I think creating a ripple kind of makes it make sense in my brain, at least.
I love that. I think your three lines, 2 words a line, would make for a good billboard in itself.
Tell stories, share values, create ripples.
And then you got your call to action on the billboard.
Right. You
Call
need
now,
the call
Ryan.
to action. Yeah.
That's awesome, Ryan.
DoubleHelixDesign.com. DoubleHelix.design, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this is the
Thanks
first
for being
time,
you guys. Thanks for
first
being
time
you
we've
guys
had you
and doing
on.
it.
Yeah, this won't be the last. But dude, it's special for me. I'm grateful that my brother and my best friend have a relationship outside of through me as well. And so it's cool that you guys, every time that you guys are having conversations one-on-one, it's cool for me because you guys are both two of the biggest people in my life. And it's special. It's cool to know that you guys also have the same feelings for each other that I have towards you guys. And so this was super awesome. It's nothing that we haven't, what I love is that it's nothing that we haven't ever discussed outside of, in a recorded format, but I still learned things and I was still reminded of things and things started to click in my head that I had forgot about. And so that's why we do this. And that's why you're on, and that's why I think we're as close as we are. But I love both of you guys a lot, and I'm thankful that we were able to do this on a beautiful Sunday.
Yeah, love you guys too. We've been through a lot, and we've seen each other in the good and the bad, and like we just are constantly. I think what I appreciate about both of you is the essence of like you show up and you give yourself to others, and you make their life better. And that is one of the biggest gifts, that you make my life better. You support me, and having those kinds of friends is those friends that you're like, yeah, I would go to war for you. And that in itself just allows me to keep being the best version of myself because of who you both are and what kind of light you're bringing to the world through this and our conversations. And so I think it's cool to also know how, like, truly we are just getting started. Like, it's so mind-blowing of where we're going to be, like, just a year from now, but 5 years, 10 years. And to really feel like what we are doing day to day is supporting that path and supporting each other to just keep growing, keep learning, keep living a fulfilled life, so that, when we're old, we can't do the things, we're going to look back and be like, that's why we did it. And we showed up.
I also love the fact that we're all on the same journey, yet much different journeys at the same time.
Yeah.
And we can all learn from each other's own personal things that we're all dealing with, which is a really cool thing.
Last little thing, the joy of being. This is when I try to like think about it. So you have all your thoughts, and then this is the gap that you're creating. And so you're aiming to become, you're the observer of the thoughts. So that's how I started to think about it. And in my head, seeing your thoughts as the clouds in the sky is super helpful to, again, just disassociate, but just like imagine those thoughts as those clouds or bubbles, actually. If you have a bubble of a thought, and then I did this the other day, I was like, okay, well, fuck, what if I pop that bubble? Like, what happens? And then just like it disappeared in the abyss. I don't know where it went, but and then it was just like I was able to have a moment of just being thoughtless because I popped all the bubbles.
Right.
It was a random little thing.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that. Seriously though, Ryan, thanks for hopping on. Like Jake said,
appreciate you guys.
This ain't gonna be the last time. And your perspective on presence and gratitude and everything that you're constantly just learning every day on an everyday basis. Every time we converse and have a conversation, there's something I learn. So I really appreciate what you brought to the table today.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Earn Your Couch. And you know what? If you made it this far, you're one of the true listeners. So Jacob and I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you for sticking around. If you haven't already, give us a follow at Earn Your Couch on Instagram, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube. If you have a family member or maybe a loved one or even a friend that you think would benefit from the conversation that we had today, we would really appreciate it if you shared this podcast with them. More importantly, if you are earning your couch, feel free to tag us. Tag our Instagram account at Earn Your Couch. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.